Under the dim glow of the church's stained glass windows, where colors of crimson and gold danced softly across wooden pews, a story began, one that no one could have predicted. The CEO, a man often seen as distant and untouchable, had come to the quiet sanctuary not to pray, but to sit in silence. His life was a blur of boardrooms, contracts, and the coldness of skyscrapers. Yet in that holy silence, he was simply a man, lonely and tired, searching for something he could not name. His heart had been locked away for years, ever since loss and betrayal taught him it was safer not to feel. But fate had a way of knocking on doors when least expected. The small sound of footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness of the church. At first, he thought it was just the faint creak of the old wooden floor. But then, he saw her, a little girl in a simple dress, holding a small teddy bear, her eyes wide but filled with a strange kind of courage. She hesitated at first, but when her gaze met his, she walked toward him with the innocence only a child could carry. He wasn't used to children. He wasn't used to anyone approaching him without fear or calculation. Yet here she was, standing in front of him as if he wasn't the powerful man the world bowed to, but simply another soul in need of kindness. "Are you sad, mister?" she asked, her voice so pure that it broke something inside him. He didn't know how to respond. Words felt heavy on his tongue. But she didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she hugged her teddy bear closer and whispered the words that would change everything. "I don't have a papa, can you be my daddy forever?" The weight of her plea was unbearable and yet healing at the same time. For years, he had buried his emotions under layers of success, wealth, and control. Yet this little girl, with her fragile voice, tore through every wall he had built. She wasn't asking for money, gifts, or promises. She wasn't asking for the things the world expected of him. She was asking for love, for someone to stay. And for the first time in decades, he felt tears sting his eyes. Her story unfolded slowly, gently, as children often reveal things in fragments. She had been brought to the church by her grandmother, who was struggling with illness. Her mother had passed away years earlier, and her father had never been in her life. The grandmother was her only family, and even she feared the day she could no longer care for her granddaughter. The little girl had overheard whispered prayers, seen the worry in her grandmother's eyes, and understood more than a child should. That's why she asked him, this lonely man sitting alone in church, to be the father she had never known. For days afterward, he could not stop thinking about her. He went back to the church, not for faith, but for her. Each time, she would be there with her teddy bear, sitting in the front pew, humming softly to herself. Slowly, he began to talk to her. At first, just a few words. Then, longer conversations. She told him about her favorite stories, about how she loved drawing rainbows even when the sky was gray, about how she dreamed of one day having a family who would clap for her at school performances. He listened in silence, and for the first time, his heart began to soften. The CEO, once a man of cold logic, began to feel the warmth of something he thought he had lost forever, hope. The little girl saw no wealth, no power, no status in him. She saw only a man who needed love as much as she did. And in that church, beneath the watchful glow of saints in stained glass, a bond began to grow. When her grandmother's health declined, the man who once believed he had no place in anyone's life stepped in. He arranged the best medical care, not out of obligation, but because he could not bear to see the child's eyes dim with sorrow. The grandmother, though frail, recognized the change in him. She told him one evening, her voice shaking, God doesn't always send angels with wings. Sometimes, he sends them in suits, lost and lonely, until they find where they truly belong. Those words stayed with him, reshaping the way he saw himself and his life. The child began to call him Papa, in whispers, afraid he might not accept it. But one day, when she tripped and scraped her knee, she cried out for him without thinking. The word, Papa, echoed through the church, and as he rushed to her side, something inside him broke free. He lifted her gently, wiped her tears, and for the first time, whispered back, I'm here. Papa's here. That moment sealed a promise, one stronger than any contract he had ever signed. His world shifted. No longer were his days consumed only by endless meetings and stock prices. He started leaving his office earlier, attending her school events, listening to her laughter fill the empty spaces of his mansion that once echoed only with silence. She painted drawings for his office walls, filling the sterile space with rainbows and smiles. His employees, once terrified of his stern presence, noticed the subtle change. The once cold CEO now carried warmth in his eyes, softened by the love of a child who had chosen him. Her innocence transformed him in ways nothing else could. She taught him to see beauty in the simplest of things, the joy of chasing butterflies, the comfort of bedtime stories, the courage of holding someone's hand in silence. In return, he gave her stability, protection, and the unwavering presence she had longed for. He wasn't perfect, he stumbled, he struggled with the unfamiliar role of fatherhood, but every time he looked into her trusting eyes, he knew he had found his true purpose. As seasons passed, their bond deepened. The grandmother, at peace knowing her granddaughter was no longer alone, whispered her final blessing before she passed away. The girl clung to him in grief, but this time, she was not facing loss alone. He was there, holding her, reassuring her that she would never again have to beg for someone to stay. Years later, when she stood tall and radiant, graduating from school, he was the loudest one clapping in the audience. She found him in the crowd, and just like that day in the church, their eyes met. Only now, there was no loneliness in his gaze, only pride, love, and the unshakable bond of a father who had been found not by blood, but by destiny. The story of the little girl and the lonely CEO reminds us that family is not always about who shares our name or our blood, but about who shows up, who stays, and who loves us without conditions. Sometimes, love comes when we least expect it, through the smallest voices with the biggest hearts. And sometimes, the most powerful transformations happen not in boardrooms or battles, but in the quiet corners of a church, where a child dares to ask for love, and a man finally learns how to give it. This tale is more than fiction. It is a reflection of something deeply human, the need for connection, the power of love, and the healing that comes when two broken hearts choose each other. It reminds us that no matter how lost or alone we may feel, there is always a chance for redemption, always a possibility of family, and always a reason to believe in love's power to mend even the deepest wounds. Love doesn't always arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it walks in softly, holding a teddy bear, and whispers the words that change a life forever. I don't have a papa, can you be my daddy? And when those words are answered, not with hesitation but with love, a new story begins, one that lasts a lifetime. Would you like me to extend this to a full 1600 words version with even more emotional depth, dialogues, and vivid storytelling flow suitable for a YouTube narration?